Me all right?
Yeah, you're a little quiet. I just have to turn my volume up. All right, we are live in a couple of seconds. Alrighty, we are live. G'day guys, my name's Alex. Welcome once again to the Tripod. This week we will be breaking down round 4 in the NRL. Really good week last week, going 16-7 on our best bets, but you'd know that already if you watched our recap pod. So for your $100 punters on our singles, you're up over $1,200, and if you put $50 on all of our multis, you'd be up over $800 as well. So $2,000 in profit over the first 3 weeks of the season. Not bad, Jacob.
It's a really good start. I think our winning percentage at 67% on 50-50 lines and total markets. You know, if you can win 6 out of every 10, that is such a big edge against the bookies. And last week we won, 7 out of every 10 bets. So that's great. Before we dive into round 4, I wanted to just tackle one topic, which is that has come up in our forums and stuff, and it's bookies moving the odds. And if you're watching live and it's not for the first time, we're going to give out some best bets for you tonight. And boys, we do have a few. And you know that some of them, the odds are going to move pretty quickly. And there's, several theories about that. Some people think literally there's people in the odds makers on some of these major bookies watching us live and moving the odds. I think that they do have mechanisms that trigger when a number of different accounts hit a market that they're going to drop the odds because they don't want to get smashed. But just a bit of advice on that. I mean, Bet Easy, we spoke about last week. It was the first time they had done team totals for the season, and we said they'd pay the price, and we smashed, over 5, maybe even close to 10 of their markets, where they moving the odds, nearly 20 cents. And some advice for that is people would say, oh, you gave out a best bet at $1.88, now it's $1.70. Should I still bet it? And my advice is straight away, $1.70 is probably not the best price anymore. Now, if you crunch the numbers, the funny thing is winning at 60%, if you can win $1.70, you're actually still making profit. And that shows how impressive what we're doing is averaging $1.88 and winning 67%. But my point is, if it gets smashed that hard on one bookie, it's often still the next best available might be a few cents lower on another bookie. Or another example I'll give, the Titans, we gave them out plus 6.5 in the first half, was $1.85. That got smashed to $1.70. Well, no longer is that the best value at $1.70 for plus 6.5 when you could have still easily got plus 6 at $1.92. So although not everyone is going to necessarily all be able to jump in on time, don't assume that what the bookies move the odds to is the best available, because obviously that's why you've got to be able to shop around.
Yeah, definitely. And we actually went through that when you gave out a pick on the 3-point shooting contest this year. I think that went from $9 all the way into $4.50. So obviously people were smashing it all the way from $9, $8, $7, $6, all the way down to $4.50. But even at like $7, it was no longer the best price in the market. So yeah, I mean, what I would suggest is, look, if you go there straight away, the price is gone. You all should have at least 3 accounts, or if not 5 or 6 or 7 accounts by now. Just go through all of them real quick and you should be able to find a similar price. I mean, when we went through about an hour ago and went through all our best bets that we're going to give out today on the pod, I would say that like 80% of the ones that we're giving out were, 1 or 2 cents different to another site. So it's easy enough to just look around and get the
and you know what, price. You may not even have to do that because of the beauty of the app and the Facebook group. People will comment and say, oh, this has moved, but the next best available is this. Or you can always ask in the forum. That's the beauty of working together as a team against the bookies. And one other thing I want to say, the bookies don't want to be handing out value to anybody. When they set these markets up, they roughly think the odds should be 50-50, and then they bring the odds down, obviously take their cut, and they'll post, $1.90, $1.88 for some totals or whatever. They believe it's 50-50. Now, just on the back of us giving out a best bet, they're moving it instantly $1.70 one side and $2.10 on the other side.
True.
So people who are paid money, like for a living to make odds, are instantly saying a market they thought was 50-50, they're now going to give you $2.10 on the other side. That shows the power of the pod. And hey, that's an opportunity for people who don't believe we're as good as we kind of claim to be. If you disagree with something that we say, or you disagree with a bet, you can get $2.10 to go against us. You don't even need to be right half the time to make money. So it shows that we're scaring the bookies at the very least, and we're making moves when they're going to give you $2.10 that our bet won't win.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get stuck into the round, mate. We'll start off with the Thursday game tomorrow night. Roosters are laying 4.5 points, hosting the Broncos. 40.5 is the total. This one's going to be a very, very interesting game. Whenever these two sides come up, it's always a good game. Both sides not completely full strength. The Roosters have named Cronk, but he's still, I guess, up in the air whether he'll play. It's a probable at this point. James Roberts obviously out for the Broncos. Jake Friend out for the Roosters. So we don't have two fully healthy teams going up against each other. Roosters really impressive win last week. I kind of said last week that game was much closer than the final score suggested. I mean, the Eels were right in up to their eyeballs up until about the 65-minute mark when the Roosters just piled on a late 3 tries. So I think that score was a little bit misleading. Broncos, with the extra time to prep off the Thursday loss, which was a pretty brutal loss for them. Whenever you get a good team, a well-coached team, off a loss, off some long prep, especially in a really, a standalone game where the public all saw them lose to a Dragon side that everyone thought was absolute piece of shit, you expect a really good effort from them. Bit of rain forecast for this one, so I think the 40.5 points is too high, especially for a big game for both teams with two very good defenses going head-to-head here.
And we do have some best bets, and remind me, are those already being shown?
They're on there, mate. They're on there.
People can be hitting them now, so we'll explain why we've already agreed on these best bets. You mentioned Cronk is in, but Cronk has been a late withdrawal 2 weeks in a row, so there's no guarantee. So if you like the Roosters, you can't be sure that you're getting Cooper Cronk. In saying that, if he doesn't play, we've seen that they're still very handy and they can give a larger role to Luke Keary. But obviously it's an advantage Broncos if Cronk is scratched again, especially now that Jake Friend is definitely out of this contest. Victor the Inflictor to the number 9. He can do a job, but it takes away a weapon off the bench as well. I wish I made that up. No, I can't take credit.
Christ.
Matt Lodgeback is a big in for the Broncos. I really feel he's a big part of this forward pack that's meant to be so good, so up and coming. It helps the young guys when they do have a few more experienced players who can shoulder some burden there. Roberts is out, but you know what? Katoni Staggs is a very capable replacement in the centres, but it is still a little bit of a loss. I think there's a little advantage to the Roosters having already played on this SCG surface. And they spoke about it being a little different to your typical footy grounds. So Broncos will, have to adjust there. But the fact that the Roosters already played there in round 1 give them an edge. But I really believe this game will be won in the forwards. And I think Brisbane has the better forward pack. So I would be leaning towards taking the points with the Broncos. I think they will bounce back after being shown up. A guy like Pangai Jr. shown up against the Dragons after an epic performance in round 2. He's trying to prove himself for his next contract. He wants $1 million from someone. I don't think he cares if it's from Brisbane or from the Roosters. So he'll be looking to showcase. But of course, the Roosters have the far superior spine, especially the 1, 6 and 7 if Cronk plays. So it's not an auto play on the Broncos, but I would be leaning that direction.
Yep, and I think the line's probably fair at 4.5, but we've got 4 plays on this one. I'm trying to read here. Anyway, so we're going with the plays for anyone that's listening in podcast form. We're going under 3.5 tries in the first half. That one is $1.80 on Bet365. We're going under 20.5 points in the first half. That one is $1.88 on BetEasy. We're taking the Broncos plus 2.5 points in the first half. That one's $1.95 on BetEasy. That price is way better than everywhere else. That's the reason why we put that in, even though I'm kind of indifferent on the 4.5 line. And the Roosters to score 3 unanswered tries, no. That one is $1.80 on Bet365. Once again, should be a lower scoring game with the weather there in Sydney tomorrow night. Moving on to the Warriors hosting the Titans. Warriors are 4.5 point favourites. 40.5 is the total. Pretty interesting game here. Two teams, that are obviously in the shit, with most bettors really. I mean, after the Warriors absolutely smoked the Dogs in round 1, they've gone and laid a fucking egg the next 2 rounds. Gave up 34 points, gave up 46 points, last week. And the defense just has looked atrocious. Like some of the gaping holes there that I've seen, I won't say.
Are you still talking about the Warriors defense?
I was going to say I won't say where I've seen them before, but they were gaping. Anyway, but the Titans are 0-3, so they are absolutely desperate. We said last week it was a desperation spot for the Titans against the Rabbits. They covered the spread, but they didn't win the game outright. So most bettors will still see that 0-3 shitty Titans, but they're probably going to get their halves back this week. They've been named, and if they do play, this line is too high at 4.5. Two desperate sides. Titans probably a little bit more desperate at 0-3. I do like the Titans here. Look, my one reservation or my one concern with this game is the fact that the Warriors this will be their third game in New Zealand out of the first 4 weeks. They haven't had to do a lot of travel, whereas this has been the third straight road game for the Titans, plus a short turnaround travel to New Zealand. It may be a bit fatiguing, but early in the season, maybe that's less of a worry. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the rigours of travel may not catch up in the first month of the season, and I think the Titans will be road warriors here. They will band together. Again, it's the same principle in round 3 betting on the winless teams. There's one winless team left. Now, your risk of betting on a team that's winless past round 3, they might just be awful, but that is not the case of this Titans team. They're a solid side, and they were very competitive, and we were impressed, and we won a good amount of money against the Bunnies, and that was without their 2 key halves in Ash Taylor and Tyrone Roberts. Now, both have got to get through training, but the way I see it, if they both play, that's great. And even if just one of those two can play, AJ Brimson very capable in the halves with an additional playmaker there. What are you giggling at there, mate?
I can see the comments; they're quite funny. I do like.
Well,
gaping.
feel free to chime in with any extra additional nuggets that people are adding. We love a bit of interaction. But look, for the Warriors, last year their calling card was really that their defense, and they were doing that breathing technique after tries, and they're not defending well, and they're not doing the breathing this year. So they're a very different outfit. But even if they show up after 2 very, disappointing matches, they've had a change in the halves. Harris Tavita is in there. Kieran out. They lose Isaac Luke, and Nathaniel Roach is injured as well. For the Titans, I think they've just got so much punch on their bench now. Moving Shannon Boyd back there, you got Keegan Hepgrave, you got Fotuaika back in this side. The big advantage I would see would be to the Warriors back 5. We've spoken about how damaging they are. But the Titans' outside backs have been improved since they got Anthony Don. And I called out Flash Gordon for not being such a flash anymore. He is still usually one of the Titans' best players. So busy. And I think the Titans are the better team. They need the win. And I know they're going to show up and put in a huge performance. And we're catching points. That's why we've got to be on the Titans again this week.
3 best bets so far on the Titans. We may release more in the app tomorrow. First up, we got the Titans team total over 6.5 points in the first half. That one is $1.80 on Bet365. We got the Titans plus 2.5 points in the first half. That one is $1.82 on Unibet. And we've got the Titans team total over 16.5 points for the game. That one is $1.85 on Bet365. Moving on to the Panthers hosting the Tigers. Panthers are 4.5 point favourites. The total is a low 36.5 points. Nothing on this game so far. I wrote down that I had a slight lean to the Panthers, just coming off an absolute embarrassment against the Storm where they only put up 2 points. But I kind of said this in the preseason pod, is that I really had my worries about this Panthers team early in the season. And I mean, they are just 1-2 at the moment, but this should be a home run spot for them to try and get to 500. But the Tigers are playing decent football, except for last week, obviously, but they're off a drubbing as well. So 2 very desperate teams, desperate for a win. I think that the Panthers are the better roster, but they've had a bit of a shake-up there. So have the Tigers, really, with Benji out and Josh Reynolds coming back in. So how will he fit in the first game? It's probably not going to be great chemistry to start with. So a bit too much uncertainty for this one for me, and I had a slight lean to Panthers just being the better team and at home and off the drubbing, but you kind of had a slight lean to the Tigers, and whenever we have that, generally we pass a game.
And my lean to the Tigers is just because I think this will be a ripping match. I think both teams are going to be bang up for it. And if in doubt, I'm going to lean towards taking the points with the Tigers there. But it is close because I know, the Panthers are the more talented side. And I look at them 1-17. Now Isaiah Yo's back in this team. Bill Kickow making his season debut. Mansour got back last week. This is basically the roster that I think should be a top 4 side. But I don't know if it's necessarily going to come together this early, like with these guys, just getting themselves back in the team. Is Kickow 100%, and match fitness and everything like that. And it's still a new regime there under Ivan Cleary. And speaking of Cleary, I think the grudge match is real for the Tigers. He had a contract. He walked out there, and there's an interview with Robbie Farah today about how it pissed off a few of the players, and he brought guys into that Tigers side, and players signed long-term deals to play for Ivan. He's walked out on them. So that they want to kind of prove a point in this one. And they're off a drubbing as well against the Dogs, which is equally as disappointing. At least the Panthers lost to a quality team. So I think that both sides are going to be laser focused. I would want to bet on both these teams. That's going to sound silly, but every week I kind of know which teams I'm looking to bet on next week because I know they'll be better. And it's just unfortunate they're kind of gone up against each other. So while I also lean, I don't have a strong play on this game as of yet.
Yep, and that's why we are leaving it. Moving on to the Saturday games, the early one. We got Manly plus 5.5 points, hosting the Rabbitohs. 44 is the total. I really like Manly in this one, and I guess it might sound square when, Manly absolutely flogged the Warriors over in Christchurch last week. But the Rabbits, this is more of like a no-risk play for us. You've got Manly that's basically back at full strength. They're not going to be let down. They're still 1-2, but they're going to get a bit of confidence from that road trip to New Zealand. Whereas on the Rabbit side, you just got injuries galore coming into this game. You've got GI that's probably not going to play with the shoulder, and now you have not one but two halves under injury clouds, and Cody Walker was wearing a non-contact bib at training, and that is a worry. And we've all said kind of previously that we had concerns about Adam Reynolds' ability to stay healthy throughout the season. So it looks like it's coming a little bit earlier than expected. But I understand that Manly's not the better team here. And even if those three players play for the Rabbits, I think we've still got a good shot with Manly. But if one or two or all three of those don't play, then we have an absolutely great price here.
Don't forget Braden Burns, who's been really impressive, and you hate to see a young guy having his best season get injured, but that's also another outside back who would be covered by GI, but now I think it's unlikely GI is going to suit up either. So they're depleted for sure, the Bunnies, and as good footy as they've played, this will be a tough trip for them, and I know Manly will show up. They're not going to be arrogant or complacent just because they got a good win last week. Last time they played at Brookvale Oval, they were down 26-0 in front of their home fans before they came to life. I know that they'll put in a better performance this time around with the confidence they have, not just from the win, but the addition of Tommy Turbo and Adam Fanua-Blake. People don't realise as well. This team does not have a lot of depth, so when they lose key forwards such as Blake, who was suspended, it makes a difference. And this Manly side has barely any depth as well, but everyone's healthy now and all the troops are on deck, and I think they could very well win this match, and we're getting a good number. Now, you'll see we've got a mechanical bet there where we're taking +6, so I just wanted to make a point about this. Look, personally, or if I was you guys, just grab the +6.5, $1.77. If they lose by 6 or less, or they win the game, you win. But with our best bets, the way that we record them, we will never give out a tip that's under $1.80. So that way we can show clearly that we're making a profit with the success rate that we have. So we are restricted, and we're putting a bid on +5.5, a bid on +6.5. And if they lose by 6, that won't be a win for our record books, but it can still be a win for you. So this is where you're not restricted the same way we are. But that's the explanation for why we sometimes give a mechanical bet, but sometimes you just want to bet the better value yourself, and that's +6.5, $1.77. It's too many points for the home team here.
Yeah, and before I go through the bets, like you said, getting 14 cents to get through from +5.5 to +6.5, the most key number in the NRL, is completely worth it. So we're taking a mechanical Manly +6 points, and that's going to end up being at $1.84. I get a million fucking questions every week about what the fuck a mechanical bet means, so I will go through it very quickly now for you. You can see on the board there, on the screen, I've got 56% on the first bet, 44% on the second bet. Essentially, all that means is, if your usual bet is $100, instead of putting $100 on your bet, you're going to put $56 on the first bet there, which is Manly +6.5 at $1.77. And you're going to put $44 on the second bet, which is Manly +5.5 at $1.91 on Bet365. Now, by doing this, you've essentially made yourself a Manly +6. You'll get money back if it lands on 6, and you'll win if they win the game or lose by less than 6. Okay, done. Then, next up, we got Manly +3.5 points in the first half. That one is $1.90 on Unibet. And the next one is Rabbits team total under 24.5 points. The best price for that is $1.83 on Ladbrokes or Neds. Moving to Townsville, we've got the Cowboys at Pickham versus the Raiders, hosting the Raiders. 38.5 is the total. Interesting game, this one. The Cowboys just looked terrible last week. We got kind of lucky, like we said last week. We had 4 plays on the Cowboys, got lucky with the first half ones, and then they got absolutely drubbed. For me, it's a great spot to take the Cows here. Off an absolute drubbing, or out of favour with the public, but they're back home. They should be putting in a spirited effort here. My concern is that I was very high on the Raiders when the season began. They've played very well so far. They're 2-1. Their only losses against the Storm, and I think they've played competently 3 out of 3 weeks. They're not up and down like a yo-yo yet, like they were last year. My one concern with this one, I do know that the Cowboys will put in a really good effort at home, especially after losing by like 30 points. But I don't know, they look like they fucking get tired. They look like they're unfit. I don't know if it's because Taumalolo's out and he had like 50% of the Cowboys hit-ups, but they look unfit and they look like they're getting gassed in the second half. It seemed that way against the Broncos. That's why they were burning them on the edges every time. The fucking defense was all bunched. And they let in fucking, 5 second-half tries, 6 second-half tries against the Sharks. So we've got a bet there on the board. I may as well just say it now. It's Cowboys plus half a point in the first half at $1.83 on BetEasy. And I feel much more comfortable taking the first half than the full game with the Cowboys side that I think is coming into the season just a little bit unfit.
I don't know if that's the case, but here's a possible reason for your theory. I'll humour you. I mean, the Floods up in Townsville, they had a very disrupted preseason and they had literally a couple of weeks there where they couldn't train and they, and the players were helping out with the recovery in the community and stuff like that. And if that's actually caused them to come into the season a little underdone, that could be a factor. But there's other things that go on in games where teams just switch off or a weight of possession mounts and teams fatigue. But if fitness was an issue, you'd like to think that will catch up. This is now round 4. And yeah, we agree. The Raiders are probably the better team, at least by a little bit, slightly, into this game. But no Aiden Caesar, Tapanay's still out for the Raiders. They're not full strength. And I think in the halves there with Whiten and Sam Williams, that is one part of the field where the Cowboys should have the advantage. This is the kind of game, obviously a very even matchup, where your halves need to be the difference. And a guy like Michael Morgan, who's, his name is being thrown around to kind of lead Queensland, he needs to recapture his form that took the Cows all the way to the grand final a couple of years ago. There's no excuses for him anymore. I'm looking for him to have a big game, looking for the Cowboys forward pack to step up because, they get a lot of credit, but we haven't seen them, we didn't see them perform last week without Taumalolo. You can't put it all on one player, so I think a big game from the Cows forward pack, home advantage. The Raiders back 5 have been excellent this year. They're getting their sets started well and they're finishing them with class. And we do have a little bit of concern that this Raiders side is the real deal. We've spoken about some great additions they've made. But for now, getting this Cowboys team that's, pretty much pick 'em like a 50-50 chance to win the game. And our bet of plus a half just means they're not losing at half time. We'll win that bet. We think that that's a good play.
Yep, absolutely. Moving on to the next one on the Saturday. We've got the Eels plus 1.5 points hosting the Sharks. 41.5 is the total. No play on this one so far, but I would lean the Eels in this one. I just kind of look at these two teams and I say, if you look at the body of work over the first 3 games, and if I look at the rosters now, I could make an argument that the Eels are as good, if not better than the Sharks, especially with an injured Paul Gallen, with Moylan out and a bit of a reshuffle with Dugan to fullback. I get that Dylan Brown's out, but I could just make the argument that these are two pretty even sides or the way that they've played anyway, over the first 3 weeks. And the Eels are at home and they're catching points. But I understand that the Sharks can absolutely put it on like we saw last week, and I'm just worried that they could put in another performance like that. But the Eels look fit. I think that the Cowboys kind of gave up, and like I said, for the last game, they looked a little bit unfit in those, the last couple of games. The Eels look good this year, and that's why I have a slight lean to the Eels. But you're going the other way here, Jacob.
Well, and as a statistical man that you are, that it's a small sample size. It's only been 3 games this year. We don't judge every team in the competition purely on how they've played this year. You've got to blend that into the fact that the Sharks were a top 4 side last year and the Eels were wooden spooners, of course. After 2 weeks, you didn't think the West Tigers were better than the Roosters or whatever. But it's a fair point. And these sides are pretty even, and the odds reflect that. But I do think the Sharks are the slightly better one. I just want to talk about personnel. For the Eels, obviously losing Nathan Brown in week 1, that was a big loss. He's the enforcer in that forward pack. But a guy who doesn't get a lot of credit as well as Tepai Moeroa, he's a monster in that forward pack. He was scratched in the warm-up against the Roosters. That hurt them. He's named now, but he's got to overcome his calf complaint. I would definitely want him playing if I wanted the Eels, and if I heard he was out, I would see a weakness in the Eels forward pack. On the Sharkies side, you mentioned Moylan out, Dugan's to fullback, but Dugan's carrying an injury as well, isn't he? And Gallen couldn't play second half. Not that the Sharks needed him, but he has a rib complaint as well. So some key players worth keeping an eye on, because each one of those players could, will do affect the prospects of their side a little bit. I think this is a very unpredictable game. Think about the Eels in round 2, I think it was. Down 10-0, scored 30 straight against the Dogs.
True.
The Sharks last week, down 10-6, scored 30 straight. So these are kind of hot and cold teams that can light it up in periods and go missing in periods. And because of that, I see a high variance of scores here. I could see either team kind of winning this game 13 plus or being really low scoring. And when there's a high variance, getting value on the line by half a point or a point isn't worth as much as a game that you expect to play very close to the way the odds makers see it. So for that reason, at this stage, you know, if the personnel breaks went the Sharks' way, I would expect that they could win this game. That is, if Dugan and Gale are sweet and Moreira's out, I'd like the Sharks. But at this point, I'm going to wait and see who actually is playing. In this season 2019, I'm noticing teams are keeping their cards a little closer to their chest with personnel, so it's hard sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. And you kind of don't want to play on games that are too much uncertainty, I guess. Next up,
you're not going to win 60% when there's, when you're playing really uncertain, crazy games.
Oh, not a chance. But one thing that I would say is kind of like, like we went on a previous game, if you have uncertainty with one team but not the other team, and you can get a line that you think is fair given those, the opposition is all those players are playing, then it's kind of a free roll to you. Because if they all do play, you've got a fair line, and if none of them play or if some of them don't play, then you've got an absolutely great line. Next up, the Storm minus 16.5 points hosting the Bulldogs. 42 is the total. This is, I believe, it definitely is the highest line that we've seen this season, and for good reason. The Storm are 3-0, and they've absolutely been crushing people. Whereas the Bulldogs are 1-2, even though they had a good win last week. Many people would still consider them the worst team in the comp, and I don't think they'd be mistaken. So the Storm have been absolutely clinical in the last 3 weeks. I think that the Bulldogs will get a little bit of confidence from that win last week, but obviously the big out is Kieran Foran, who should be out for about 3 months, they reckon. So it's one of those games where it's like, I'd like to take the 16.5 points, but I just know that the Storm are so clinical and their defense is so solid. And we kind of said this, in previous pods, and that's why we like to take Storm oppositions under. Because even if the Storm get up 20-0, kind of like we saw against the Panthers, they don't let up and they don't let in soft tries at the end. So you never kind of feel safe with a big line like that. If like the Storm are up 12-0, if the Storm are up 12 with like 10 minutes to go, you're not cheering. And that Bulldogs attack will struggle to put in, more than 2 tries, I would say. So at this point, we're staying away.
Yeah, this is a huge line, as you said, the biggest so far this season by a considerable margin. And you mentioned a lot of people have the Dogs as the worst team in the comp, and that includes us. We give out our power ratings every single week. We associate a number with each team of how many points they are better than each other relatively. And we have the Storm right there at the top, number 1 in our rankings, and the Dogs and the Cellar at 16. And we had about, I think, 13 points between these sides, and that's not accounting for the game being played in Melbourne. So just on a really, back of a stamp, or whatever the expression is, back of an envelope calculation, I could tell you you'd have the line right around 16.5 favouring the Storm. And you mentioned that taking plus 16. It's actually already moved to plus 18. If anyone out there does like the Dogs, shop around. And I think you'll get 18.5 just by kickoff, because the Storm have been so clinical.
To put it in perspective, I don't know if there was any line over 18.5 in the entire 2018 season. Do you? I don't think there was.
You know what? Yeah, there may have been a couple in that range with the Eels towards the end of the season. But that is getting up there. But the Storm is not a side that lets up. Not only are they the best team in the comp, and I think you're regretting betting against me that the Storm or Broncos will have a better season than the Roosters. The Storm aren't going to lose many regular season games.
I just wanted some fucking action, mate. And you kept bargaining and you bargaining.
It's like, Jesus. We bet against each other. You made a statement pre-season you didn't think Storm would make top 4, so I had to jump in and get myself some action because I disagreed. But not only are they the best team in the comp, they haven't copped a serious injury yet. Nearly every other team's lost at least one key player. So they're healthy and they're the best, so they're so hard to beat. On Foran, we literally said it on Monday. He had his best game, but every time he carries the ball, you're scared he's going to get hurt. And in the preseason pod, we said we don't even really factor him in to the Dogs prospects because he's just getting hurt every year, and it's sad, but it's happened again. He's out for a long time with an ankle injury. Jack Cogger comes in. And you mentioned, we've been printing money betting against the Storm opponents' team totals, just betting on them to have low totals. The issue here is it's so low for the Dogs. They're expected to score around 12 points. And because they've got the confidence that they won last week, that takes a little bit of pressure off. Dean pays contract's been extended. Nobody expects them to win this game. They can play fast and loose. They can throw it around. They can push some offloads. They can take some chances. And maybe they can, anyone in the NRL can score with a bit of luck, whether it be off a kick or chancing their arm, even against the best defense. So it's probably too low. It only takes 1 or 2 moments and you're going to be sweating. So that's not a guaranteed play to me to play the Dogs under. And it's very hard to ever get any value on a very short favourite. But they're definitely a side, the Storm, that I'd be throwing in multis where you're getting cash bonus and stuff like that. As a head-to-head, I would call them a lock. That would be a Lucy lock for 2019. No, they're not going to lose this game.
You willing to put something up if they do lose, mate?
Cock on a block? We'll have a think about it. We'll put something out. Yeah, join the group. There'll be some good banter.
Get the scissors out. Next up, this is actually, I would say, one of maybe my favourite game of the week. I love the Knights here. Knights are -2 hosting the Raiders. 38.5 is the total. What have I got there? Hang on, Jacob, take over, because I've written Raiders here, even though it should be Dragons.
Okay, don't confuse people. So we've got the Knights hosting the Dragons as the final game of round 4. And of course, we've heard that Ponga moves to fullback. And our boy Mason Lino comes into the halves, number 6, to partner Mitchell Pearson. Why they didn't just start with this at the beginning of the season is a bit, perplexing. And Ponga, I feel like a guy who tore the competition to shreds last year, probably wins Dally M if he didn't have the hammy strain late in the year. He has not had a big effect so far in 2019, and I'll say yet. And that is very ominous for the Dragons, because at fullback we know what he can do. So I think that is actually going to be a real boost, even though they've lost a guy in Connor Watson. I think it's the right decision. Saifidi might be back into the team. We've got to wait and see. Gave out. On the Dragons side of things with personnel, Dufty slots straight in at fullback, where they know they lost Witter. That takes away the disruption in their spine. Now they know who they are and they know the combinations that they need to work on. It's still a loss. Witter is their best player. I like the Knights as well, and you've probably put up the best bets now. But one concern I have, and I've still liked these players and we stand by them, is Frizzell, a chance of returning from a busted nut. That will be 22 days after the injury, which is obviously 3 weeks. And we had heard that injury was going to be anywhere from 4 to 6 to 8 weeks. I don't know if you've ever injured your nut and how long you needed till you were full recovery. But we, as betting on Knights, are hoping that Frizzell does not play, because he is a beast, and he's a big loss for their pack since he's been out, and it has shown. Even though the boys did stand up last week against the Broncos, I think that the Knights pack can get the better of them. I like the Knights in this one, and even if these two teams you consider them even, that we speak about a strong home field advantage at McDonald Jones Stadium, and we're getting -1.5, and we think that home field's got to be worth 3 or more. So for those reasons, we like the Newcastle Knights.
The Knights are going to win this game. They've finally got a decent lineup out there, and this is probably the best lineup they could have. Even if Connor Watson was healthy, you could maybe argue that Mason Lino is equal or possibly even better there in the halves to partner Mitchell Pearce. But obviously we've got Ponga at fullback, thank Christ. Like you said, Frizzell named on the reserves, but they kind of said that was going to be roughly a 6-week injury. I doubted that he plays, and if he does, I'm not going to say what you would do early in the game. Just give him a little love tap there and he'll be out for the rest of the game. Good spot for the Knights as well. Dragons' 3rd road game out of their first 4. The Knights' 3rd home game out of their first 4. The Knights have a great home field advantage. Like you said, we kind of said that it was worth about 3 points. So with the line at 2, and we've got 1.5 there on the board, but even with the line at 2, you're saying that the Dragons, without Witter, are 1 point better than the Knights? I don't think so. I know a lot of people are kind of saying, now the Dragons are finally playing Dufty at fullback. Widdop is their best player. It's not an upgrade that he got injured. I still don't trust the Dragons' halves necessarily. Dufty does a job, but he's no Widdop in that lineup. It is definitely a downgrade that they've lost Widdop. I'll tell you where the biggest downgrade is: goal kicking. Who the fuck is going to kick goals for them? I know Lomax can kick goals. He's starting on the bench. So it's going to be a struggle there for the Dragons. I think the Knights can win this, and I think they can win big. It's one of my favourite plays of the round. We've got the Knights for the best bets for this one. We've got 2 for now. We've got the Knights -1.5 points. That one is $1.85 on Unibet. That's a great price, actually. And we've got the Knights team total over 19.5 points. That one is $1.80 on Sportsbet. Anything else you want to add, mate? That'll do it.
And of course, as we know, every week we're going to go through the full slate and every market on every game tomorrow. These are our initial thoughts, but we've shared with you guys a bunch of gems tonight, again, that we didn't know if those bets were going to be available tomorrow once we, showed our hand of who we liked. So we've shared those out now, but the full, combination of bets and multis are going to be posted on the Tripod app tomorrow. Some bookies still don't have team totals up. I think we were talking about BetEasy before. They hadn't given team totals all season, and then they showed them last week, and we smashed them.
Last week.
They're not even putting up team totals. If you look, even the Broncos Roosters is tomorrow. They got no team totals, so they're running scared. But some other bookies will put up some more markets. So we want to get the very best of the numbers and best of the prices for you guys who follow us. So we need a little more time to do that, and that all comes out tomorrow. But thanks once again, everyone who tunes in to watch us live.
Yep, definitely. So make sure you're you've downloaded the Tripod app before tomorrow morning. We'll release those around lunchtime tomorrow. If we're going to add any more, and usually we will find a little bit of extra value. And make sure you're in the group as well. There is a link in the description to this vid. That's where we'll have all the great game threads and a bit more banter, and not just tips, which is mostly in the app. But that'll do it for tonight, guys. We'll catch you, whether we're chatting to you in the app or in the group, but we'll catch you on this page for a recap of round 4 on Sunday night, right after the late Sunday game. See you then.